So good morning.
Good morning.
Today we read the story of the Transfiguration. It's a familiar story, and we hear it twice each year. So it shows up in the lectionary right before Lent, and it has another showing on its feast day in August. So it's a story we've heard over and over and over again. And we hear it over and over again because it's a really important story, and it has a lot to teach us and a lot for us to remember. So there are so many things packed into the story, which I will say is probably good since we get it twice a year. But today, what I want to focus on is the light. So Jesus takes 3 of his disciples up the mountain. They are his closest friends and companions. So we know that we have seen a little bit of evidence that the disciples knew who Jesus was, right? So a little before this, we have Peter made the statement that Jesus was the Christ, the Son of God. Others had declared some understanding of Jesus as the Son of God as well. If you remember all the way at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, Nathanael said, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. And those were pretty big words for, not the very beginning of Jesus' ministries. And I'm pretty sure that Nathanael didn't really know exactly what all that meant. Later, we see Martha call Jesus the Messiah and the Son of God at the tomb of Lazarus. And while that's after the Transfiguration, it shows that the disciples and the followers of Jesus, they had some words, some language about who Jesus was and that he was the Son of God. They had a vocabulary to describe who Jesus was. And they had plenty of reason to believe, right? So Jesus seemed to fulfill all the prophecies of the Hebrew Bible. They heard the voice from heavens at Jesus' baptism that said, "This is my beloved, with whom I'm well pleased." The disciples had traveled with Jesus and saw him heal the sick, cast out demons, and they listened to him teach with this really uncommon wisdom. So the disciples did know something about who Jesus was, but I'm not sure they ever could have imagined what they were going to see when Jesus lit up with this luminous, uncreated light. So the uncreated light is one of my favorite names of the divine. Sorry, I'm not sure why this won't move today. There we go. The uncreated light is one of my favorite names of the divine. I use it in my prayer often. So I pray to be drawn into and warmed by this uncreated light. On the days when there is sun, we need more sun, but on the days there is sun, I sit outside and I just let the sun hit my face. And I think of it as the light of Christ shining on me. I like symbols, and the symbol of light is probably my very favorite. Why did Jesus want to show the disciples this light? Why did he want them to see him transfigured? Maybe he wanted them to know the light that lives in them. We often think that God is away and he has to show up. But the Transfiguration teaches us that the light is already hidden in the mud of our own humanity. Our spiritual life is not about getting something that we don't have. It's about the luminous eye finally seeing what has been there all along. One of my jobs, so Julie, I think it's because it's cold in here. And so this can't actually feel my thumb. It's actually quite hysterical. All right, we'll see. I don't know. All right, so one of my jobs at Epiphany was to lead the children's sermon. So I take all the kids out of the sanctuary during the gradual hymn. So right before they read the gospel, I'm standing in the back and all the kids come running, down the aisles. And I get them. And I have to go take them somewhere in this secluded place where whatever we're going to do is not going to bother the people in the sanctuary, right? And every week I try to come up with some way to tell a story. Something that kids, everywhere from 4 to teenagers would listen to and be able to remember. And a lot of you have done the same thing, right? You've taught the classes over here. And so you know exactly what I'm talking about. And, sometimes I'd use puppets, which I do miss my puppets, but, I'd have puppets, I'd have object lessons, anything I could use to illustrate stories. So for this story, I handed out these simple line drawings of Jesus. It looked like a basic coloring sheet. And then I handed out cups of what looked like plain white acrylic paint. They're sort of unimpressed that I had only brought one color to paint with. But they humored me. They painted their pictures while I told the story. So they painted his robes, his hands, his face with this white paint. When they were finished, they looked a little underwhelmed. Under this bright fluorescent light of the room, the paintings looked completely ordinary. There was nothing miraculous about them. It was Jesus on a white piece of paper with white paint. But then I asked my helpers to kill the lights. So they turned down the lights. It became completely dark. And I pulled out my ultraviolet light, my black light from Amazon, and I swept it across their drawings. And it was the best. All of a sudden, the kids are like, wow! Because Jesus just shone. He just lit up with this luminous glow, electric neon glow. And the Jesus that they had been painting wasn't playing at all anymore. He was radiant. He was shining with a light that seemed to come from inside the paper. And the kids were so excited. But I think the best part was when we turned the lights back on. Because we turned the lights back on and all of a sudden they were like, what happened? It's just this boring Jesus again, right? The glow, it just vanished. And Jesus went back to looking ordinary again. And so I told the children that morning what I'll tell you today. The light didn't disappear because the room got dark. The light was already there. We couldn't see it because the everyday lights were just too distracting. I almost looked at my finger to try and turn the page. This is the mystery of the Transfiguration. Jesus didn't become something he wasn't on that mountain. For one brief, shimmering moment, God simply just turned down the lights of the world so that Peter and James and John could see the glory that had been standing in front of them the whole time. It's really easy for us to miss the mystery that we're so used to being in the mundane. We have to find ways to see past what is ordinary. So one of the ways that I have been doing that is studying Syriac. My favorite saint is Ephraim. And Lisa, I meant to bring my icon. So Lisa got me a little icon of Ephraim in Greece. And I was going to show it, and I forgot it. But my favorite saint is Ephraim. He was a Syrian saint in the 4th century. And my interest in him has taken me on this beautiful journey of learning a language about faith that is steeped in symbols and beauty. So Syriac was the language of the early Christian communities and the manuscripts in centuries following Jesus. It developed apart from the Greek philosophical influence, preserving the distinct symbolic and mystical emphasis. So if you think about the way Christianity developed, heavily influenced by Aristotle and Plato and Greek philosophy, really focused on, like the early fathers, about boundaries and theological ideas. Who is God? Who is Christ? What is the perfect word to describe who these people are? And this part of the tradition was like, that's folly. You're never going to be able to do that. But isn't God like the rain? And so I love the symbol. And I want to teach you a few Syriac words today. So the first 2 words are Hela Kasa. So say that, Hela Kasa. So these words mean hidden power. It's the conviction that if a person's life is in ruins, even if they've been told that they are broken, that there is still this interior spark that remains untouched by the world. The untouched spark is pure light, and the word for this is Nuhra. Say Nuhra. Nuhra. So Nuhra, by the way, one of my favorite words. I use it as a breath prayer all the time. Breathe in on Nu, out on Ra. Light. Nuhra is the light of the Transfiguration. It's just scaled down to the size of the human heart. So the Transfiguration wasn't only a revelation of who Jesus was or is, it was a mirror held up to show us who we are. It reveals the light that lives within the ordinary architecture of our own lives. This is who we are. It is what we mean when we say that each person bears the imago Dei, or the image of God. They have the Nuhra, inside of them. So as you go out today, I want you just to place your hand over your heart for just a minute and feel the warmth that's there. And just breathe into it and know that that is your Nuhra. That's your original blessing. No failure can extinguish it, and no shadow can dim it. You are a bearer of the uncreated light.